ready?
They put something in the chat saying they're ready at 6:30. So
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm going to open this meeting at 6:30. This is the Planning Commission, and if we can have a roll call to establish a quorum, please.
great. Chair Amadeo,
Here.
Vice Chair McCarthy,
Here.
Commissioner Hurst said she's not going to be here. Commissioner Rana.
Yeah.
Commissioner St. John.
Here.
Commissioner Walton.
Here.
Commissioner Woodson.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. If you would join me in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a volunteer to do the pledge? Thank you very much, Richard. Okay, moment of silence first.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner St. John. And we'll move on to our consent. First we will move to our special announcements. I'm sorry, I'm very distracted tonight. So do any members of the public have any announcements? If so, please raise your virtual hand. And I'm not seeing any. We'll go back to the commissioners. Do any commissioners have any announcements? I don't see anybody raising their hand. I only have one. And that is just to announce that this is likely Brian McCarthy's last meeting. He should be sworn in to the city council at the first meeting in December. And unless I hear otherwise from our director, then this about the Planning Commission having another meeting, this would be his last. So Director, and I'm going to try this, Persicone.
Chair Amadeo, you can just call me Guido if it's easier for you. It's fine.
Okay, I will.
Fine. I'm sorry, what were we going to ask? I'm sorry.
I'm asking if we will have a second meeting at all in November, or will this be Commissioner McCarthy's last meeting?
Unfortunately, yeah, it will be his last one. I should have thought of that ahead of time. We probably would have prepared a little proclamation or something. So we'll have something for you after the fact, Brian. Little nice. But yeah, we're not having, because the next meeting would be Thanksgiving, which we're not going to have a meeting, obviously. So.
Correct. So Brian, do you want to say anything to the public or other commissioners before we move on the agenda?
Sure. I didn't have anything prepared, but thank you for the comments, and Guido, please don't spend any staff time. I appreciate the gesture, but I will still be with the city. And so I think, in the work that we all do together is thanks enough. And so I look forward to continuing to serve the city. The relationship between the Planning Commission and the City Council is kind of an interesting one, one that we probably all view very differently, but I hope that it only continues to improve. And, I might be leaving this commission, but, my door is always open to anyone. So I look forward to staying in touch with everyone on this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Woodson, you have your hand up.
I do. I think, Brian, we wish you well. And we're not going to leave you. We're just going to now come to the city council meetings and always have comments directed specifically for you.
I love it. You're going to make sure he's done his homework, huh?
Right.
Okay, so we will move on to the minutes and okay, and I have a question for Guido, because in both the consent agenda, it has the minutes and it has a public hearing. And it has 2 public hearings. And so I'm wondering, do we approve the minutes and then move on to the public hearings? I don't understand.
This is the agenda that I'm operating off of. The next thing is informational items, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I must be in the wrong spot. Okay, informational items. Because I'm seeing consent agenda and it had A, B, and C.
Yeah, I mean, I can double check, but this is the one today's the 10th, right?
Okay, I may be operating off of the wrong agenda. Let me see. I am. For some reason, I pulled up the wrong one on my phone. So I have it on my computer, but I didn't pull that one up. Okay, so thank you very much. And I'm going to pull it up on my phone so I don't make that mistake twice.
So, Madam Chair, we're fortunate to have the Marina community partners here tonight. They're giving an informational item. They are changing some of the architecture in phase 3. And
Okay.
I thought it was good to show that this is a staff level, consistency. This is more just to show the commission. The commission doesn't have a formal role tonight in this. We're just, full disclosure and wanting to let the commission know about good stuff going on in the community. So I'm going to
That's-
pass it up to Doug Yount and Don Hofer for this presentation. So
That's great. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Can everybody hear us okay?
Yes.
Good evening, Chair Amadeo and Planning Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And Doug just turned his camera on. You can see him there. And I know a lot of you know Doug real well. And it's been a little while since we've been in front of you. Last we came in and I think we gave you a presentation kind of on general presentation on the dunes and how things were coming along and what we were working on. They covered the entire project. Tonight, what we're going to just spend a little bit of time on is going through what we call the west side, which is our phase 2 west and phase 3 area. Let me share my screen with you also. Let's see. We have just a quick little presentation we're going to give you. And
I'm trying to figure out, oh, you got it. Okay, great.
and so then hopefully if I start a slideshow, you'll be able to see that. Let's see if it works here. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Slideshow? Okay, perfect. So we're gonna just share some of the work we've been putting together for the west side at the dunes. This is the green area here. Well, first of all, I guess this is the dunes project. This is our land use map that comes out of the specific plan. Hopefully you're familiar with this. Second Avenue is that road that goes north-south there, and then Imjin Parkway. The west side is this green area here that just came onto the screen that you can see. The very top portion of this is what we call phase 2 west, which Marina Community Partners owns today. We purchased this from the city in, I believe it was June of 2020, right before Fora sunset. And the next phase that we will be purchasing from the city is our phase 3 area. And for many of you that are familiar with the Blight and old barracks that are down along 2nd Avenue across from CSUMB, that's the area that is our next land takedown and where we're working today on building demolition. But combined phase 2 west and phase 3 are what we call the dunes west side. And we're going to give you a little presentation this evening on that and how it's going. Just as a starter, a number of folks were able to meet us yesterday morning out on site. We had sort of an official kickoff of building deconstruction at the dunes. Kind of a significant event, for almost 20 years, Marina Community Partners has been working in your community to redevelop the dunes. And this is the start of our last major phase of deconstruction. We found significance in it also in that, here we are on the week of Veterans Day. And just incredibly thankful to have partnered with the city and on this important project. You know, so many people have served our country, and I think the number is 1.5 million enlisted folks came through Fort Ord, and many of them spent time in these barracks. And so kind of a significant event. And we wanted to have an opportunity to thank the city, thank you, but also thank all of those that served here at Fort Ord. The site has been cleaned up. We've been de-vegetating the site and preparing, removing hazardous materials from inside the buildings. It's an abatement process that we've spent probably about 4 months working on. And now that we are through our tentative map approval, we are beginning building deconstruction, where you're actually going to see a real transformation of the Dunes West Side happen over the next 5 months. So buildings will be removed over the course of the next 5 months. And then we'll be off to grading and putting improvement, new utilities and streets and whatnot in the ground in this area. So this next slide is to talk to you a little bit about architecture. So the photos that you see on this slide and towards the bottom are architecture that we have, homes that we've built on the east side of the project. And I think this will show you, yeah, the green outline there is what we call our phase 1C and phase 2 east areas of the project. The product lines we've built in that area are boathouse, sea house, surf house, and beach house. And, we started the residential component here in 2014, and we're now projecting that we'll complete that next year in 2023. So we're very focused on the next aspects, which is, of course, the west side. And here with me tonight is Jack Gow. Jack will wave his hand. Jack is our forward planning manager that's responsible for the west side at the Dunes, and working with your city staff to get through plan check and approval of all of our various different plans and documents and designs. And Jack is working on this tonight. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jack, at this point.
I'm just very happy to work on this project. As Don described, this project has very significant aspect for this community, for the county also. Just very happy to be here.
So Jack's a great asset for our team. So so this architecture that we built, this architecture that has been constructed on the east side of the project, has gone through some revisions over the years. We've refined it, and I think for the most part we've built a home in a community that we get very, very strong reviews from homeowners about. But as we move to the west side, we're making a bit of an adjustment in our architecture and our plans and sort of the look and feel of the community. So that's what we're going to present to you tonight. There are 3 different product lines for the west side. The first one is a product line we call Bay House. And this is sort of a rendition of the previous Duet product we built called Sea House. It's an alley loaded product. It ranges in size from 1,900 square feet to just about 2,300 square feet, as you can see there. Whoops, my computer skills are not helping. And gosh darn it. I keep hitting the mouse and it advances. Anyways, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. Some of them have a loft. And the architectural theming is a little bit different, right, than what you've seen in the past now. So you can see that here, the different types of architectural themes, coastal farmhouse, coastal cottage, and then what we call a modern farmhouse. And those elevation styles will be a little bit more prominent in these next product lines that I'm going to show you. So there's another product here that we call Lighthouse. It's kind of our mid product. And what you're seeing here are two elevations that look very similar, but I'm going to describe the difference for you. On the left here is a 2-story rendition of our Lighthouse product. It ranges in size from 2,800 square feet to about 3,000 square feet. Again, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 3 to 4 baths, depending on what it is. There's a fitness room. And then we have an option for what's called a roof terrace. And so on the right, you see a little bit different. You can see up there in the upper right-hand corner of each one of those plans, a roof terrace. And it's kind of an exciting concept that we're bringing. It won't be on every lot. It'll be on some of the lots on the west side. And tonight I'm going to try to go quickly because I know you have limited time. We have Justin with us tonight with Vandertool and Associates that's going to show you a little bit more about that roof terrace. So I'll save that for just a minute here. The third product line is called Sky House. And Sky House is our largest product for the west side. You can see again the coastal farmhouse, coastal cottage, and modern farmhouse elevations here. Very similar to what we just showed you with Lighthouse. These are all consistent with the University Village's specific plan, architectural guidelines, and so kind of fit right within that. And then again, you can see 3 to 4 bedrooms, 3 to 4 baths. There is an option for a 5th bedroom and a fitness room in this product line. And the real outstanding feature on this product line is a 3rd level. And so you see on the right side there, the 3 different plans that we have, all with potentially a 3rd level. And it's a little hard when you look at it in just a 2-dimensional flat elevation like this. That 3rd level is actually set back and doesn't have as much street presence as you might think. You'll see that in what we're going to show you next. But the idea here is from the Dunes west side, as our neighborhoods will sort of cascade down the hill from 2nd Avenue to 1st Avenue, there's really great opportunities for views of Monterey Bay. And so we wanted to spend some time understanding really what those views were going to be and how that was going to work. And so we've invested quite a bit of time with Justin and Vandertool and Associates in putting together a 3-dimensional model. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to ask Justin to pull up this 3D model. And we're going to give you guys just a little bit of a flavor of what we have been working on. And this is kind of the cool factor. So I see Justin there. Are you able to share your screen, Justin?
Bringing it up now. Yep.
Okay. So, with technology these days, we can do a lot to put into 3D modeling exactly what a community might look like. And so Justin is starting here along 1st Avenue in the community on the corner of 1st and 8th. And you can see from this perspective, the community kind of terraces up the hill. I'm not sure how else to say that. It's not really a terrace, but it kind of steps up the hill. There's as much as, is it 50 feet of fall from 2nd Avenue to 1st Avenue, Jack? Is that right?
40 to 45.
40 to 45 feet, I'm corrected, in elevation difference between 2nd Avenue and 1st Avenue. And if you wouldn't mind, Justin, go down to street level here on the left side there so they can get an idea of what the street presence looks like. So this is interior to the neighborhood in the west side. And, for now, we haven't really spent as much time obviously adding color or different elevation styles and whatnot to this model. So don't pay too much attention to that, but this gives you an idea of some of the massing and the look and feel from the streets. And then on the right here is our Lighthouse product. And so we've modeled what it might look like if you had a rooftop deck. And so Justin will go up to this rooftop deck where you can see that person standing on this Lighthouse model here and give you an idea of the view looking out to the west from the top of these homes and out across the city's arts building, and then Highway 1 and out to Monterey Bay. So this is our lighthouse model. And what that rooftop terrace will sort of bring to the community. And then Justin, if you maybe spin around and look back on the other side of the community here, you'll see our larger product line, which is Sky House. And occasionally you'll see sort of that third story that peaks up above the other rooftops. And so Justin, if you don't mind sort of flying up to one of those, and we'll give people a perspective of what that is. And so again, the homes in front don't have the third story roof structure, but then these do. This would be what we call our Sky House product line. There's the opportunity for an office or a exercise room, or maybe a little bonus room here on the left, enclosed, and then again a rooftop terrace with a roof structure over it, and then you kind of have this vantage point looking over the community and out towards Monterey Bay here. So pretty cool product. We're very excited about it. We're excited about the opportunity to get on with this next phase of development at the dunes, and that's our presentation for this evening. I mean, if you guys have questions, we can spend more time, but I want to be respectful of your meeting, Chair, and don't want to take up too much time here, but this is kind of what we've been working on.
Thank you, Don Hofer. And if any of the commissioners have any questions for Don or any of his team, now would be the appropriate time. Just raise your virtual hand, wave at me. Any of those things will work. Well, guess what? Vice Chair McCarthy will go first, and then Surinder, Commissioner Rana.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering if the team at Shea would be willing to say anything about kind of the motivation for these changes. Is it what they just market driven, or yeah, I guess that's just my only question. Sure,
happy to respond. Yeah, it is market driven, I would say, Commissioner, or do I say council member now? Maybe both, Commissioner and council member. So it is market primarily. I mean, architecture has changed, right? If you think about when that original product for the dunes on the east side was originally designed, that was in 2000, probably the 2010 timeframe, maybe earlier than that. And then when we started the phase 2 east, which was 2020, when we purchased that land from the city, we modernized that to some degree, but even within that, there's really been some changes to architecture. The market has shifted a bit in terms of what people are looking for. Obviously COVID came in. People are looking for more opportunities to have outdoor experiences in their homes today. We want to be able to respond to that. The market provide it. There's also a little bit more of a coastal theming that is, I guess I'd say more current than what we designed. At the times we advanced the designs for the east side, of course, they were very current and relevant at that time, but this is just more in line with what's happening today in the latest architectural trends. And so that's been the inspiration. I mean, we're looking at a little bit more of a modern flair, let's say, to some of this. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And I don't want to get in trouble by the chair, but I'm just going to sneak a quick comment in and say that I think the outdoor elements are fantastic and really help. There's kind of a healthy living component, right? When people are able to go outside in a private way. And I'm super excited about that.
Thank you.
You're not in trouble. Commissioner Rana.
Yes, small question. What's the timeline for this phase of the project, phase 3?
Good question. So the very first aspects of the west side will be in what we call our phase 2 west area, which is that area that's just to the south of the VA DoD clinic. And we are working with city staff right now to towards a grading permit in that area. We are anticipating starting grading work in December in that area. And then from there, model starts are currently scheduled for May, I believe is the date. And then production starts at the end of next year. So, you'll start to see things vertical coming out of the ground, hopefully by about middle of next year in that area. And then phase 3, where the demo is happening, the barracks are coming down. That's a bit of a longer timeline. Our current estimate for land purchase from the city is August of next year. And then from there, infrastructure goes into the ground, and we have to build streets and grade and do all that kind of stuff, which will take us into 2024 likely before we see vertical construction in the phase 3 area.
Okay, and one more question, that some of the houses which are close to highway, they're going to be affected by the noise from highway. Is there some technological measure taken to mitigate that kind of impact on people living in those houses?
Yes, for sure. We have a sound consultant that we use. So Charles Salter and Associates is our sound consultant, and they're in the process of preparing a sound mitigation report. And so they actually come out and they set up microphones and they measure noise levels from the freeway at different times. And then they recommend to us sound mitigation measures. So it could be things like sound rated windows or doors, maybe in outdoor areas, those plexiglass, screens that will help to mitigate some of the sound. So there could be a number of different things that we do to help mitigate that noise. So that's a great question.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's everything, Commissioner Rana?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walton.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you. What a great presentation. These homes are absolutely beautiful. I love the yard space, and I'm hoping that that is part of the plan that will absolutely stay. And then the question I have is with respect to price tag. Do we have price tags for these? Do we know what the ballpark is? Can you talk about that a little bit? Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, we don't have pricing that we've announced yet for them. So, I wish I could. We're a ways out from that now. We have sales. We have a presence in the market right now on the east side where we're selling homes. I should be better prepared for that to be able to tell you what our price range is. But we'll set pricing on the west side as we get closer to our first release of homes, which is not for a while.
Any other questions from commissioners? I'm not seeing any. I don't have a question. I've been following this project since about 2004, I think. And it's always been a mixed emotion for me because we came here as members of the military and stationed at Fort Ord, and to see it close and watch the deterioration is always difficult, but to see what is happening to take its place is very exciting. I am pleased to see that you're doing the upper decks on some and a third story on some. It reminds me of how the Spring Hill Suites took advantage of that height differentiation as well and provided open space for their guests and for people who use it for events in order to give them spectacular views that you wouldn't necessarily expect in a development like this one. And in fact, it is the creativity of your staff that has provided that, and the organizations that you work with that has made that huge difference. And I just wanted to say thank you, because you've made this emotionally much easier for me. Thank you very much.
Happy to do so. Thank you for your time this evening. And, again, if you guys have questions after this, always happy to answer them or spend time with you if you're interested in what's going on at the dunes. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on. That was our first informational item. Next one is the 2023 Planning Commission or Academy. 3 commissioners have expressed interest. That is Commissioner Herr, myself, and Commissioner St. John. And the Community Development Department has a budget for 1 additional commissioner. So Guido, would you like to talk a little bit about what goes on so we can generate some interest for 1 more commissioner to participate?
Yeah, especially for the newer commissioners, it's a great opportunity. You get to interact with the league staff. You get to interact with other commissioners from up and down the state. We will fly you down there, stay in a hotel. Then you'll get, I think it's 2.5, 3 days of training. I'm fortunate as the director, I'm able to move some money around. So I know I originally said only like 1 or 2, but I can move some money around if we have interest for potentially 1 more person. So.
That's great. And they should contact you offline, or do you want to hear from someone tonight?
No, they can contact me. Karen is our admin assistant. She's not here tonight. I've asked her to kind of run point on booking flights and hotels and all that other stuff. But we're probably going to need to firm that up by, I think last time we waited too long and we ran out of the spaces. So I'm thinking by beginning of the year, if you definitely want to go, then please definitely reach out to Karen or myself, and then we'll get you guys set up.
So I do have a question for you in regards to that. I think part of the problem was is you wait, and I want the commissioners to understand this, that you wait so that you can book all of the rooms at the same time and the flights at the same time, transportation, etc. And last time, yes, waited too long to ensure that you would have the spaces filled that you had available. And then there was no room at the hotel and at the conference. So don't wait too long.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my only comment. Don't commissioners don't, and staff don't wait too long, because
Yeah.
it really is a tremendous opportunity.
Yep.
Okay, are there any comments at all from our commissioners? Yes, Audra, go ahead.
Thank you. So, and there's for this meeting, there's no Zoom participation. It's all on site and physically have to go. Okay.
I believe so. Usually if you sign up, or if we have another person sign up, you might have access to the videos, but because we didn't have somebody, because I was new to the city last year, I should have bugged you guys earlier. Because we waited too long, that we didn't get access to the videos for the last conference. So yeah.
Right. If isn't it correct that if you have any members going to the conference, then the city has access to all of it on video later on? That's the way I understood it. Yeah.
That's the case, yes.
I would like to have access to those videos.
Great. We'll, after it, just let me know and we'll be glad to get you set up.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I'm not seeing any hands, so we're going, excuse me, I'm sitting on the floor. I don't have a desk to sit at. Okay, so we move on to an informational item on pet restrictions in the Muni Code, presented by Planning Manager Christy Hopper.
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. This is just a very quick, the information is provided in your packet, but it's a response to Commissioner Woodson's questions on pet restrictions, allowances, enforcement, and that type of thing in the city of Marina. So let me just share my screen really quickly. Oh, come on. No. Too many things pop up on here. Let's see, we want to go to. I'm trying. There we go. All right, so City of Marina pet policies are located in, so there's two different sections of our municipal code. There's a whole animal section in Title VI that kind of talks about enforcement, you know, animals running at large, and that type of thing. That's not really what we're looking at right now, but I did provide to you in the memo links to that. It is a good read just for understanding a little bit what more of what goes on with when we're dealing with wild animals, etc. And so this this little chart is really showing what we're most interested in from my understanding, and this is all in Title 17 in our zoning ordinance, and it's broken down by zoning district on what types of pets and the number of pets that would be permitted in each zoning district. So in our, so cats, it specifically says cats and or dogs. We were kind of debating what exactly that means. So you could have in the R1 district 4 cats or dogs, R2 4, R3 is restricted to, excuse me, R2 is 4 and R4 is 2. In the coastal zone, for cats and dogs, it is restricted to 2. So chickens, that's an interesting one too. And a chicken is defined as a hen, not a rooster. So roosters are not permitted in our city. And the chickens can only be in the R1 or R2 district. There are a lot of zoning regulations as to how chickens need to be kept, as far as coops, in some cases distance from fences and other properties. So there are some restrictions on that. I do have the full memo when we come to any other restrictions, if there's specific questions that the commissioners have. But other than that, unless Commissioner Woodson has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer.
Can we go back? Can we take this off the screen now so that we can go back to the, thank you. So commissioners do up. Commissioner Woodson.
Asked to be brought up, so I'm just kind of curious. And of course, I'm asking zoning and not, unfortunately, we don't have compliance here, code compliance. Curious, what we have all these nice rules, and I get the chickens aside, but on the cats and dogs, and you talked about how running around. So now now it goes back to outside versus inside. I'm just curious, what happens when somebody has 8 cats or dogs?
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and I have, let's see. Okay, hopefully you're seeing that. So I did include in the memo penalties for violation of the municipal code, and this is really across the board. So if there are complaints about pets or any other type of thing within the city, a complaint is filed with the city's code enforcement officer, and the city then will follow up to see if a violation occurs. So a violation, the municipal code also sets out the penalties. So if somebody just decides not to comply, the code enforcement officer or other designee does have the ability to fine residents and whomever fine, it would be $100 per violation per day. That's your first violation. If you do not correct your violation, it's $200 per violation per day, and that would be the second violation within 1 year of the first violation. After that, it increases to $500 per violation per day. And that's within the first year of the first violation. So that goes through our building department. There also there is an ability for a resident who is under code enforcement to request a hearing from a public hearing officer. So that's the enforcement that the city is able to do.
Okay, Commissioner Woodson, did that answer your question or did that lead you to other questions?
No, it's just, it seems like this is all of this is a reactive policy to control people who at some point or another neighbors don't like, versus a health and safety issue. And I think that was my point when I started reading over it, that unless somebody reports their neighbor or somebody else for this isn't a proactive policy where code enforcement is going to come out and, hey, look, let's look at your house and you have 5 cats and dogs because we see them all sitting in the window. So therefore we're going to give you a violation.
Right.
They're waiting for some type of proactive or reactive response to somebody saying something. And it just feels like at that point, we have it written so many places and we have such high penalties, $100 per day that could be written. And so, oh, you have 5 cats. It's fine. It seems kind of, and it's in line with everybody else in the state pretty much, which means it's probably also in line with most zoning across the country.
Mhm.
Since I guess everybody probably has to set this. I don't know. It just seems kind of odd.
So
So-
what I understand you saying, Commissioner Woodson, is that that the city has more of a reactive rather than a proactive policy. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
This isn't like code enforcement is not going to go around there. And if he's driving by and he's just stopped at a stop sign and he looks over and he sees somebody has 5 cats and dogs sitting in the window just enjoying themselves in the sun, he's not going to stop and generally go up and say, "Hey, look, you have 5, you're only allowed to have 4, or you're only allowed to have 2 here. So I'm therefore going to write you up for compliance." It seems like this historically is probably something that is, oh, somebody has a rooster in their yard versus a hen and they get reported on. So therefore it just becomes, here, we've got a hammer and we're just going to use this to ensure that we keep a level of compliance versus something that is necessary to be managed.
Right. I understand exactly what you mean. So currently, because of we have a code enforcement officer 1 day a week, maybe a little bit more, the city is looking to hire a building inspector who would also help out with code enforcement as well. So we'll have more code enforcement hopefully in the near future. It has been the policy of the city, as directed by the city council, that we are more reactive than proactive based on on a complaint basis, as well as when the priorities when cases come into code enforcement, of course, is health and safety number 1, and then kind of goes with the degree of severity on what needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. But the best practice for the community, if they do have a complaint, is to file that complaint. It is an anonymous complaint form that will go into the city, and it gets on the case log so our code enforcement officer can follow up.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the work kind of summarizing it all.
No problem.
And I want to make sure that I am understanding Commissioner Woodson's the full ramifications as what he's saying, because there are places in Marina that I've seen when I was campaigning where people had 15 junk cars and who knows how many washing machines and dryers. You couldn't even safely get to their front door for the amount of rusting, I'm going to call them dangerous old appliances and cars that were not operating. And that person, the first complaint, gets $100 a day, just like the person who has one more animal. And so I'm going to say that it sounds like, not that it shouldn't be enforced, but that enforcement should be, the penalties when you enforce should be more consistent with the amount of damage it's doing to the environment that it's in. So the health and safety issue of junk cars and appliances that can become rat infested, et cetera, is much more dangerous to the neighbors than the person having one extra cat or dog.
Understandable. And right. And these fines are in our municipal code. And so in order for any differentiation to be made on the degree of severity, that would require a municipal code amendment. But it's a very good point to bring up.
Yeah. Okay, Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair for staff, and this is a highly kind of legal question, so I would totally understand if you don't know the answer or don't want to touch it, but do codes like these, and maybe it's right, like fence length or how many animals you have, do these kind of codes give residents an extra legal standing if for some reason they wanted to litigate a concern of a neighbor? Let's say they felt their fence was too big and it was, when they go to court, does referencing that the city has developed this code give them any kind of extra legal standing? Or, and again, if you don't want to touch, I know it's kind of highly legal, but I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, we should probably stay away from kind of giving out legal, interpretation. If I had my JD, I'd be making a lot more money. So
fair enough. I completely understand.
Yeah. So, but I mean, in general, if it's a neighborhood dispute, to answer your question in another way, oftentimes city employees will get caught up in, well, the fence is too high, and then we'll give both parties what's the appropriate height for the fence. And then they want us to kind of be on their side of some neighborhood dispute. And then we have to kind of thread a needle of giving out the regulations, but then very politely saying, hey, we've given you this regulation. This looks to be a private matter between two parties. And, you can go talk to Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center or the Monterey Mediation Center or whatever that might be. But yeah, we try to stay out of, we obviously have to enforce the codes, but want to be mindful of not being drawn into private disputes. So
that's a good answer. I appreciate it. I guess my only other comment / question is, I do think this ordinance is there for good reason. And as much as I understand what my fellow Commissioner Glenn Woodson is saying, that it does seem arbitrary, and enforcement is certainly kind of seems to be across the board. I do our neighboring city of Monterey has a significant problem with feral cats, and that probably started as a problem in a household where there were too many animals, and it probably wasn't enforced the way that it should have been. It's a really complex issue, and one that I've been told not to touch with a 10-foot pole, because people are very passionate about their animals, as I would be too if I had one. I don't right now, but yeah, it's a good discussion. I'm glad that in Marina we don't, at least from what I've seen, we don't seem to have huge problems with this, as I think Commissioner Woodson was maybe trying to point out, and I hope that doesn't change. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and I did want to point out for the commission that first of all, we appreciate Commissioner Woodson asking the question, because it actually did force Christy and I to kind of dig through the code. But I would also point out that we do have some real glaring weaknesses in our municipal and zoning code, and I've been here for about a year, and I have about a 3-page memo of stuff that I will be sharing with the commission in January of some things We don't have a temporary use permit section of the code. There are some design review standards that are old. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we'll be talking about in January. And so these kind of exercises might seem on the periphery, but they're actually very helpful for staff. So if you guys have questions about our code, definitely reach out to us, and it actually helps us and kind of helps, like some cities still have things about, oh, you can't spit on the sidewalk and, and things like that. And then even for us, there's some type of dance permit that's, Christy she knows what I'm talking. So so there's a lot left to be desired. And as part of the general plan update, we're going to be focusing on the general plan and then immediately pivoting to making sure the zoning code is consistent with the new general plan. So changing the code, trying to build that culture of making sure the code is consistent with state law and relevant, honestly relevant, not some 1950s dance permit. So,
One more quick question. My neighbor used to have a horse, which is very interesting for those that know who I live. And this wasn't about 10 years ago. No longer has a horse. Are we aware of any horses on residential property in Marina today? Is that something that happens, or?
Not that I know of. I mean, the restrictions when you read through the memo on the keeping of horses is it's pretty restrictive. So, there is a possibility of doing it within the city. I have personally not seen any residential property with a horse.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, Chair.
Commissioner Walton.
Thank you. Welcome back, Christy. It's so good to have you.
Good to see you, Audra.
Yes. So I think this question, I guess maybe I'm just asking for a little education for myself and for some of the viewers. Could you talk about the different tiers between in the residential zones R1 through R4?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I should have clarified that.
Worries.
So R1 is our single family residential district. Typically, you're going to see single family homes in there. In some cases, very rare cases, you might see, if it's a very large parcel, a couple of houses on there, because the general plan does allow a little bit of density, 5 to 7 units on R1. R2 would be considered our duplex residential zone. We really only have, I believe it's only one parcel that is zoned R2. We're going to look at that and see if that's something we want to remove. But because of what is constructed on there, the R2 has remained. R3 is a zoning district that we actually do not have any property zoned R3. That would be a little bit above the duplex, but below multifamily, which is R4. R4 is higher density, up to 35 units per acre, potentially even higher in the R4. So that's where the tiers go, from single family and then up to the multifamily.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, Christy. That was a great response. I'm sure when we get to zoning and all of that, we're going to hear all about the commercial side as well. There's a lot of different zoning districts that we'll be working with when we do the general plan and the zoning update. Okay, so let's see, there are no other questions, so let's move on. We now have the consent agenda, and that is the Planning Commission action minutes from October 12th, 2022. And before I entertain a motion, I do have a quick question, because that is action minutes as opposed to, no, it is action. I'm sorry. I was thinking the minutes where you have every detail, and these are action minutes. And so therefore it's not about the discussion, it's about the motion and the vote, correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Chair Amadeo.
There has been a history in this city of minutes not being just what the general item was. Staff gave a presentation on XYZ. Here was the motion. Here's who seconded it, and here was the vote. They were very detailed. They included all comments from the public, all comments from every commissioner or council member. We are no longer doing that in this city. Is that correct? We are doing action minutes.
We are, with the caveat that if we have a potential appeal or a call up to council, I've directed Karen to do more detailed. The last set of minutes, as you recall, dealt with the Pacific Roots Catalyst Shop.
Right.
The commission denied, and now it's going before the council for final deliberation and just to have a clear administrative record for those type of items.
Okay.
And that's what you see. Those had a little bit more detail this time. So
Okay. And you also explained the reason why, which I thought was important. Okay, so if we can have a motion to approve the minutes.
I propose a motion.
Okay, we had a motion by Commissioner Rana. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
And we have a second by Commissioner Walton. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
sure. Commissioner Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Yes.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. There's no action items or public hearings tonight, so we're going to move on to study sessions. This is the 6th cycle housing element study session presented by city staff and Rincon Consulting.
Yeah,
So-
we're really fortunate. We have a real all-star group from Rincon. We have Ryan and Kamiko here tonight. So they're going to be doing the bulk of the presentation, and I'm also here to answer any questions. So
Great.
send it off to them.
All right, thank you. So who's going to start us off, Ryan or Kamiko?
That will be me.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. So let me just try and get my presentation up. All right, can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, as the city has just been getting started on the housing element update project, we wanted to really hold this study session to go over housing element background for you, some of the outreach efforts that have gone on so far, future outreach events, and just a general timeline, and then get any questions you might have on the process and get any feedback or direction from you. So, all right. So the agenda tonight is pretty brief. I'm going to have a brief intro right now, go over some of the outreach efforts that have gone on recently, touch on the housing element update basics, what goes on in the housing element and the update process, and then specifically focus on the site inventory component of the housing element, and then go over next steps. So that's kind of the agenda for this evening. So the project team, you all know Guido. Myself, I'm with Rincon Consultants as well as Kamiko. We also have Veronica Tam and Associates on the consultant side helping with the housing element update. They will likely be in future workshops and future hearings for the update. So the housing element update has a project website on the city's website. For anyone at home, you can scan this QR code, or if you simply Google City of Marina Housing Element Update, it should be the first thing that comes up. But on the website, there'll be information on the housing element, what it is, upcoming outreach events, ways people can stay informed, and then there'll be some contact information so they can email us questions or any comments they have during the process. So outreach efforts that have gone on up to date. Last night, we actually had the first workshop, the first community workshop. It was virtual. There were about 22 people, I think, that attended overall, and we had a good discussion at the end. It followed a similar presentation as the one I'm giving tonight with a little bit more detail. But overall, just top of mind, some feedback that we heard. People wanted to see more affordable housing, obviously, but specifically affordable so employers can have employees that live in the area. People wanted to see how the city can reduce folks having vacation homes or maybe second homes in the city. There were some comments about discrimination happening to people who are using Section 8. So all of the feedback we'll take into account as we start the analysis and come up with policies and programs. Guido and I have been holding stakeholder interviews, and we'll be holding them throughout the housing element update process. And that's with different community groups and organizations, affordable housing developers, and people providing housing for special needs groups. There is currently a survey up on the city's website, the Housing Element Update website. I'll have a link to that at the end of the presentation tonight, but that is, we recommend everyone go there and take it. It should be up through the month, but if we still see people are submitting responses, we'll keep it up as long as we need to. So just to go over some housing element basics, this might be review for some of you, but if not, the housing element is one of 8 mandatory elements of the general plan. It's a little bit different than other elements in that it needs to be updated every 8 years, and it needs to be certified by the State Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we are updating the housing element for the 6th cycle. For jurisdictions in Monterey County, they need to have a certified housing element by December 31st of next year, so a little over a year from now. There is a 120-day grace period as well per state law, so the city actually has about until April 2024 to have their housing element certified by the state. So these are kind of the main components of the housing element. Much of the housing element is data analysis, looking at a variety of demographics and conditions in the city. So it looks at housing needs currently and into the future. And that really is looking at various demographic trends, housing stock, and information on housing in the city. The housing element will also look at how the city implemented previous programs in the last housing element and how the city should update some of those programs if some of them weren't going as planned. The site inventory is a pretty big component, which I'll go over in a little bit more detail next, but essentially it looks at identifying sites to meet the city's regional housing need. Then another component of the housing element is the constraints analysis, which looks at what are the barriers to housing in the city? And barriers could be governmental barriers. So are housing projects taking too long to be reviewed and approved? Are fees too expensive, or are development regulations too constricting? It also looks at environmental constraints, constraints from infrastructure, wildfires, things like that. And then finally, there's the goals, policies, and actions piece of the housing element, which really is the most important part. It identifies actions for the city to implement to meet the housing need in the city and overcome barriers that are identified. All right, so I'm sure you are aware there's been a slew of new state regulations related to housing over the last 5 or so years. I'm not going to go into detail on all of these, but a lot of the programs in the housing element will need to ensure that the city updates various parts of the code to make sure they're in compliance with state law. Some of them that I'll note here, SB 166, no net loss. This is related to the site inventory piece of the housing element. I'll go over that when I get to the site inventory part of the presentation. AB 686, affirmatively furthering fair housing, or I can call it AFFH, makes it a little easier, but essentially that requires cities and jurisdictions to affirmatively further fair housing, which means to take actions to combat fair housing issues in the city. So those can be discrimination issues in the city. It could be segregation patterns. So are there areas of the city that are lower income, segregated by income level or by race, or areas of the city that have disparities in access to opportunities. Just to note, it might be top of mind for some of you, but the recent regulations here listed, AB 2011 and SB 6, which allows for residential uses in commercial zones. I'm not an expert on these yet. These are new regulations. They won't be impacting the analysis or inventory piece of the housing element update, but it'll be important to consider what the ramifications will be for the city. So as part of the housing element update, we'll keep an eye on, as information comes out on these new regulations to make sure we're implementing policies that capture these new laws. So the site inventory piece of the housing element, essentially this piece of the housing element is used to identify sites to meet the city's regional housing need allocation, or RHNA. And what RHNA is the number of units that the city essentially needs to construct over the next 8 years or provide adequate sites for in the housing element. It's one of the main components of the housing element that the state looks at for certification. So it's a pretty important piece of the update. So how is the RHNA allocation given to various jurisdictions like the city of Marina? The state hands down housing unit numbers to the regional government bodies. So for city of Marina, that would be the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, or AMBAG. They go through their own study and determine the number of housing units that the various jurisdictions in Monterey receive. And then Marina moves forward and updates their housing element. And then that restarts the 8-year cycle, essentially. And the RHNA allocation is distributed by income level. So the city will receive a number of units that they need to plan sites for very low income, moderate, and above moderate income. And those are determined by the area median income in the area. So for Marina, that's about 82,000 per household of 4. Very low income units would be those making about 30 to 50% of the area median income. Low is 50 to 80, moderate is 80 to 120, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure you're probably aware, but the city, for the 6th cycle, the city of Marina was allocated about 685 units for the RHNA allocation. 94 of those were for low income, 62 low, 173 moderate, and 356 above moderate. And I mentioned previously in the state regulation slide that there's a no net loss regulation. And so as part of the site inventory, the city needs to plan for an additional 20% buffer above the 685. And that's essentially to ensure if a site that the city identifies is built with housing units that are less than was assumed, or maybe there wasn't any housing units at all that was built, that there are sufficient sites elsewhere to capture that difference. So that's just something as part of the site inventory we need to plan for. But as far as the city's RHNA requirement, that is 685. The chart here on the right is comparing the previous housing element RHNA allocation in blue and the current one, or the one for the 6th cycle, in orange. And as you can see, the RHNA allocation for the city has actually gone down. And that's a unique characteristic for the city. Jurisdictions throughout California have seen their RHNA numbers increase pretty substantially over the previous housing element cycle. So that's something unique that Marina has for the 6th cycle. And there could be a number of reasons for that. Over the last 10 years, the city has been building a fair amount of housing. So the region could have taken that into consideration. It also could be looking at where future job growth and major corridors are, and maybe the county wanted units to be concentrated in those areas as opposed to in the city of Marina along the coast. But the sixth cycle site inventory will need to plan for about 685 units. And so how, as part of the housing element, can the city meet that RHNA requirement? There's a number of steps that are listed here. The first two are looking at credits that the city can put towards its allocation. So the first thing to look at is, are there housing projects going through the review process now? And so that's planning review or building review. And I know we just saw that the Dunes presentation, which looked like a fair number of units that are, coming up in the future. So the city can use any units going through that process and count it towards its RHNA allocation. We also can look at accessory dwelling unit trends. So how many units have the city been permitting on average over the last 3 or so years, and projecting those trends out over the next 8 years? And we can count that towards the RHNA allocation as well. Next, if needed, we can identify vacant and underutilized sites that allow for housing. Typically, we like to start for sites where the city has had property owner interest. Maybe a property owner has come to the counter and said, we're interested in building housing. So we like to look at identifying those sites first, and then looking at vacant sites that allow for residential uses, and then underutilized areas that maybe have capacity to build extra buildings on the site and units, or have redevelopment potential. And then finally, if needed, the city can identify sites to rezone in order to accommodate housing or to allow housing at maybe a higher density. So those are the steps the site inventory will follow. We're just getting started on it, but just some preliminary feedback or analysis. So the city currently is working with HCD to get approval and sign off on the 5th cycle inventory. Guido could probably speak to this a little more if you have questions at the end of the presentation, but HCD has preliminarily agreed to that sign off. But as part of the 6th cycle, the city has a fair number of units going through the planning process, as I'm sure you know. And so based off of that and accessory dwelling unit trends, we're confident that we'll be able to identify underutilized or vacant sites to meet the city's RHNA allocation without any rezoning needed as part of this housing element update. But that's if rezoning or land use changes is something the city is interested in doing, that's definitely something we can consider, but it doesn't appear that will be required as part of this process. Finally, as I mentioned previously, AB 686, or affirmatively furthering fair housing, that really requires a fair housing analysis and component to be a part of the full housing element update. So we will be doing a pretty robust analysis.
Oh,
Power going out?
no, my husband's flipping the light on and off.
Gotcha. So we'll do an analysis. Guido and I are conducting outreach right now with different community organizations to get feedback from what's going on the ground, what fair housing issues people are experiencing and seeing. The site inventory piece that I just went over, we need to consider that the identifying sites aren't making fair housing conditions worse. So we're not identifying sites in low resource areas or concentrating lower income sites in the same area. And then the city will need to incorporate, as part of their actions and policies, meaningful actions to overcome any fair housing issues that are identified. So just briefly to go over kind of a tentative timeline and next steps. We're here in the study session tonight. We're aiming to have a community workshop sometime around February or March of next year. This will be workshop number 2, covering the sites inventory and fair housing. Shortly after, having public hearings on the draft housing element in March or April, and then releasing that element out for public review in April or May. And that's a required 30-day review period, and then we'll need to respond and make any updates based off of that. And then we submit to the state for their 90-day review. And then it's not on the screen, but the state will give us a comment letter at the end of that review period. We'll make any necessary revisions, and then we'll come back for approval of the housing element. And then it will go back to the state for official certification. So that's essentially the process and the timeline. Typically, we've seen at least 2 reviews, but for the most part, there's been 3 or more this cycle because of all the new requirements and regulations. And then this here is just showing how the community can stay involved in the process. Like I said, there'll be upcoming workshops. Check in on the housing website for official dates. Like I said, the survey is available on the city website, the city's housing element update website. For those of you who want to, you can scan this and I'll take you there right now, but it might take 10 or so minutes. So you can get that on the city's website. Guido and I are always available via email to take comments or questions, and then obviously attending formal hearings like this evening. And that wraps up, my presentation this evening. I don't know if Guido has anything to add.
I do not. That's why we pay awesome consultants to do all the work. Yeah.
But yeah, we wanted to get, any questions you had on the process or direction or feedback. We're still in the preliminary steps of the update, but we can take anything in mind as we go forward in the process.
Okay, if you can stop screen sharing, there we go.
Sure.
And Commissioner Walton has a question.
Thank you, Chair. So my question really is just, I think it will be a quick one. Will there be opportunities with respect to purchasing, I guess, with Marina numbers? Is it specifically for rent, or will there be opportunities for low-income people to become homeowners via this particular inventory? Thank you.
Yeah, the inventory is really just a process that we'll go through to identify sites for housing. It doesn't actually build or construct the housing itself, but we identify sites that we think are most feasible to be developed in the future. And then as part of ensuring that affordable housing is developed in the city and on these sites, those will be a part of the policies and programs in the housing element. So whether that's making the inclusionary housing ordinance more robust, requiring more affordable units and that sort of thing, those would be part of the policies and programs.
Thank you.
Commissioner Whitson.
Thanks. It's interesting you actually had a slide. And there's a question I had, and it's maybe for just open discussion later. But since it's part of both of these pertain to it, first I am wondering what the current trend is on ADUs. I was thinking I was going to add that later on tonight anyway, given that we've had a couple of ADUs that have been advertised out in local sources to rent in the last week that have popped up. So I was just kind of curious, what is our trend over the last year now that there's some data? And then the second question was the city, and I just can't remember the answer, the city retention ponds that we have intermixed across many of our streets. Are those going to be looked at as part of this whole process, since they're not really used as retention ponds anymore?
Retention ponds, that has not come up at all in any of my discussions, Commissioner Woodson. So yeah, I'd have to take a little bit deeper dive into that. We have not done any research on those. To answer the first part of your question, so ADUs, you guys have seen a couple presentations from our contract planner, Alec. He is trying to find ways to reduce barriers. He's created a whole new web page. He's updated all the handouts and forms. We are actually getting quite a few more inquiries about ADUs, and then this commission's actually asked Alec to come back either December or January to talk about the pre-approved ADU plans that some cities are doing. And that actually came up last night during our community workshop. So we're going to be coming back to the commission and kind of sharing what Seaside, San Jose, and some other cities are doing to further streamline ADUs. So
Okay. I can
Average,
wait.
it's about 8 to 9 units per year. So we can assume about 66 units to put towards the inventory.
Okay.
But if there's more that's constructed over the next 8 years, great. But the state has to look at, what are the.
I wasn't really concerned about the number per se. I was more just interested in that the state has put this up, the ADU, JADU thing as a core component of their solutioning to housing, with the idea that, there were tens of thousands of homes that would be eligible. Okay, there are tens of thousands of homes is great, but if there are only dozens of homes that or less that are applying, it doesn't really make a dent. It just helps individuals. And so I was just kind of curious at where our community is standing towards moving from the one-offs towards more of this is part of our componency of our housing situation solution.
yeah, I mean, at the counter, we are seeing quite a bit more inquiry. Not as much as my previous city. And I just came from Los Altos. We did like 102 ADU approvals in the last 2 years. Not as many here, but we are definitely getting a lot more inquiries. And so, yeah, we'll probably see some more being built in the next couple of years. So.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Woodson. Commissioner Rana.
Yes, this question is for Guido. During one of our discussions, I think last month or even before, Guido mentioned that the city is losing some money because we are not building enough houses. And now in the 6th cycle, we have less allocation of FRENA houses than the 5th cycle. So should that be of concern to the city?
So Ryan is helping me with the 6th cycle housing element. And so we're on track for that because we're trying to get done by December. What I did say was that we are losing a lot of state grants because we're not compliant with the 4th and 5th cycle housing elements. And as a matter of fact, there was a Marina resident who actually works for state HCD, and he reached out to me and the city manager about 4 weeks ago and was like, hey, are you guys aware of this like $900,000 free money the state's basically giving away? So I did some research, went to a webinar, and then right there, smack dab in the middle of the webinar, it was the following cities are ineligible for these funds. And there were 21 cities, and we were one of them because we don't have the 4th and 5th cycle housing elements done. So we're not losing money for the number of housing units. We're losing money because, and that's what I'm working on, the 4th and 5th cycle housing elements. And so you guys are playing a major role in that. December 8th, I'm coming back with Kamiko and one of her coworkers, Nikki, for the affordable housing overlay. And if the commission recommends that, and if the council adopts that, we will be compliant with 4th and 5th cycle housing element. So that's what I was referring to.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner St. John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to voice a concern, I guess, and direct it to Ryan for what my understanding of affordable housing. And I've looked at the median income numbers for Marina, and they're somewhere in the range of $40,000 to $50,000 a year for a median income family. And the numbers that you gave were about 80,000 for a family of 4. But anyway, to put it into perspective, for a family to be eligible for a home mortgage, some of the guidelines or the rules of thumb are that the level of mortgage would be some 3 to 4 times, between 3 and 4 times the annual income for that household. So if we took an annual income of $80,000, the eligibility for a mortgage would be in the range of 340 to what, 400, no, I'm sorry, 240,000 to 320,000. And I live in Sea Haven, and we've had a beautiful presentation this evening on the dunes. And there's lovely houses. The dunes is approximately 1,000 houses, I understand. And Sea Haven is also about 1,000 houses. But none of them are in the median affordability for median income households. They're just, the builders are just not focused on building houses where mortgages would be in the $200,000 to $300,000 or even $400,000. So how can the city of Marina provide affordable housing when the projects that we have on the books and possibly in the future are way outside the ability of median incomes in California?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that might be, I'm not sure the complete background on the Dunes project and, when it was officially certified and permitted, but I think what you're getting at is what the city could do potentially is make their inclusionary housing ordinance more robust. So essentially that's requiring housing developers who come in to provide a certain percentage of the units to affordable housing buyers. And maybe that's restricting, typically cities will either require developers to have on-site affordable housing, or they will allow them to pay in lieu fees for then the city to build housing elsewhere. So you could, forego that and just simply require developers to build affordable housing on those sites moving forward. That is one option.
May I interject here? We use words like affordable and housing, and the moment I hear housing, when people are discussing median income or low income, they think of housing as for purchase. Can we use the term dwelling units when we talk about housing people? Because then you're looking at the full gamut of available kinds of housing. Some are for rent, some are to buy, and there are different income levels. And then even within the buying structure, there are so many different levels where the ability to buy, it might be below market rate housing. It might be, I'm trying to think of the other term that is similar to below market rate housing, but it's not market rate housing. It's not below market rate housing. It's another level that is available for purchase. And that way, we educate the public and our commissioners on the variety of types of housing that we're looking at when we're looking at RENA. It's not just for purchase housing. It's the full gamut of housing that's available. It may be apartments. It may be townhomes. It may be duets. It may be single family homes, but it's a full gamut of housing that has to be available and a percentage for these different levels of cost. So if it's very low income, what percentage of the housing that's built must be for very low income? Those are dwelling units. It's not about single family homes. And so can we use language that clarifies that when we're talking?
Sure. Yeah,
I would really appreciate that. And I think our commissioners and the public would appreciate that we're using the technical language about housing that, that will clarify what it means when we're talking about the arena numbers.
yep, I can do that.
Thank you. And Glenn, do you have another question or comment? Commissioner Woodson? I'm not hearing you, so you must
No,
be.
I don't. That's why I've
Okay,
always
thank you.
wondered. I just thought
Okay,
it
thank you.
got raised by mistake.
All right, and Commissioner Walton, your hand is raised.
It is. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So my question, and thank you for that dwelling units language change and the reason for it was eye-opening, and did bring me to another question. So with respect to multifamily dwelling units like apartments or duplexes, townhomes, would we still be able to put those on market for purchase, and not just for rentals? So the people that would be, so then we would have the ability to have on the market homes that are for sale in the 200 to 300 range, as opposed to the multi-million dollar plus homes that are going up throughout the rest of the new housing that's coming in from the dunes. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that depends on the housing developer and the project at hand, whether they want it to be condos or apartments. And certainly if there's existing apartments in the city that, you know, want to go through the conversion process, that's an option too. I don't know if that answers your question or if Kamiko has anything to add over that.
Can I ask what do you mean by conversion process? I haven't heard that. That's new for me. Thank you.
Yeah, so essentially Guido might be able to speak to this a little bit better than I can, but apartments that are for rent can go through similar to a map, tentative map, and turn those units into owner occupied condos, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you can file for a condo map and make individual units condos. That is a common practice. Yeah. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. A great presentation, Ryan. Thank you for that. I'm always finding that I'm learning so much. I think this is a complex issue, and add to that the legislative changes that are constantly happening. There's just always so much to learn. You had mentioned, and actually for reference, I listened to your presentation yesterday, so you mentioned it both yesterday and today, but that we actually exceeded our housing growth compared to our population growth, which is a good thing, I presume. Is that based off of sited, like the adequate sites process? Is it based off entitled units or actually built out units?
That's based off of census data.
So census data includes housing units?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I would assume that would be built, right? Because census would only count built units?
Right.
Okay, because we have a ton of units that are entitled that haven't even been built yet. So we're already exceeding population growth, and then we already have all these others in the pipeline. I just think that's really exciting and such a positive, it says something really positive about what this planning department is doing. So kind of wanted to make that comment. In addition, Commissioner Woodson talked about the retention ponds, and I don't know, I've heard that in the past, the city has sold some of those ponds out to be developed. And so I'll be curious what Guido comes back with in terms of that. But I want to add to Commissioner Woodson's comment that there's also a lot of other land. And I think of Del Monte Boulevard, which was designed to be Highway 1, was Highway 1 and is no longer Highway 1. And it's 4+ lanes and a median. It's now our downtown, and maybe we don't want it to look like a Highway 1, and maybe there's some real opportunities to reclaim some of that land. And I don't know how that plays into this process, but I really appreciated Commissioner Woodson's comment, because I do think it's something the city should look at. Where are these areas of and I don't want to use the wrong words, but if you might call it surplus land or underutilized land. Another example is kind of by Walmart, where you've got what could be 5 or 6 lanes goes into 2 lanes, right? Like there's almost just, in my mind, no need for that. And so maybe staff, when you do come back with some of those things that Commissioner Woodson had mentioned, maybe you can take a look at that element as well. I think that's my only comments for now. Thank you, Chair.
I would love to come back. I probably need a little bit more background. So are these the storm drain retention basins, Commissioner Woodson and Commissioner McCarthy? Or I have no content. So if you want to talk to me offline or now, I don't want to take up the commission's time. But
Yeah, they're called percolation
Perk ponds.
Perk ponds. Got it. Okay. I got one near my house in San Jose. Got it. So sounds like there are some perk ponds that are they abandoned or?
My super limited understanding, it sounds like Chair Amadeo wants to add in, but because we live on sand and we don't have a robust storm drain infrastructure, or didn't when we were built, these ponds were built to handle the storm overflow, but that could be handled in a different way.
If I can add to that, we do have a couple of places where there were once perk ponds, and the city sold the land to a developer to develop 2 or 3 houses on a perk pond. But we still have to consider we don't want to be draining into the waters of the US. So the perk ponds were designed so that they went down into the aquifers to replenish our aquifers. That's what they were about. The sand naturally filters, and you're allowing your aquifers to be recharged through your storm drain runoff rather than it going into the oceans or rivers or our vernal ponds.
Okay.
What they found when they developed these 3 or 4 houses on these lots is that in order to still have that ability to percolate water, they had to build these infrastructures underneath that were very costly. And we've certainly done that underneath the dunes, but for the small areas of a percolation pond, it was very costly to a small developer who's only doing a couple of houses to put in that kind of infrastructure. So I don't know if they've gone away. We still have ours in my neighborhood that is utilized to drain the water.
Okay.
So
yeah, I would love to send me a map, make a little dot. I'll go make a visit, and I'll kind of interesting opportunity. Very cool. Very cool.
yes. Okay. And I had one other comment. When we look at apartment conversion, the idea of converting apartments to condos so that people can purchase, we also need to remember that if you're doing that, you're also could be taking away from low-income housing that is desperately needed. So when we look at those things, we need to look at the balance between the availability of condos for purchase and the availability of low-income housing, because we need both.
Right. And the chair brings up a good point. There actually is a condo conversion ordinance for the city of Marina. It's pretty strict, like a lot of cities, because to that point that, you don't want to take away housing from one side and give it to another, right? So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Commissioner Walton.
Thank you so much. So to that, Madam Chair, I guess I'm not understanding why the conversion wouldn't stay prioritized as a low income housing unit for someone who is in the low income bracket to be able to go out, ask the bank for a mortgage and come in and make that purchase. And maybe it's something in the ordinance that I would need to look at, or someone can quickly brief me on.
Maybe one of you can talk about qualifying and whether it's low income, moderate income, et cetera. That would be
I can speak a little bit to it, and we could potentially agendize it. So, I spent 12 years in East Palo Alto, and there was a predatory lender who was trying to buy apartment complexes and then flip them into condos. That community obviously is a little bit more low income. And what that predatory lender was doing was buying the building, not putting money into it. Hopefully people would leave, and then trying to condoize all of the units and then jack up the price for the condo itself. And so that's a really extreme example that the city of East Palo Alto had to fight on. And I'd have to look at our condo conversion ordinance here. So there was a wave about 10 years ago of cities trying to protect their renters from that kind of predatory lending and practices. And so, like I said, we'd probably have to agendize it, but that's just in a nutshell. If you don't have a strong condo conversion ordinance, how people can buy an apartment complex, try to make it in a condo, and then people who maybe that's their last potential source of housing get booted, and that would be unfortunate. So,
Am I able to jump in again, or?
Yes, absolutely.
So would we not be able to update our ordinance to make sure that predatory lenders wouldn't even have a chance to get their foot in the door to be able to create prey out of low income people?
absolutely, yeah. So for the housing element, the blessing of the housing element is the commission and council has a lot of discretion. And so if we take a couple steps back, so the housing element is, what are the long-term policies for your city? What are the constraints to housing? What are some ways the city working with the private industry can reduce those barriers to housing? And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of discussion, including this meeting. There's a lot of inputs, and then Ryan, myself, and Kamiko will come back February, June-ish timeframe, and then we'll say, hey, this is what the community is saying. Ryan's alluded to the inclusionary ordinance probably needs some work. Our density bonus ordinance needs some work. If this is an issue that the commission feels passionately about, the condo ordinance, I can certainly schedule it for a meeting, and that can also be part of the housing element, because usually chapter 5 of the housing element is, hey, we've heard everything the community has to say. Here is the 10 to 20 specific policies we're going to tell the state we're going to do to help encourage housing for our particular city. One of them might be, please review your condo conversion ordinance to protect people, right? So yeah, that's really you guys are on the commission at a really good time, and that the housing element gives the city a great deal of latitude to help encourage housing and also to protect renters and protect the existing housing stock. So there's a great deal of latitude the commission has. As long as we meet our December 2023 deadline, then we're good. So.
Thank you
And-
so much. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Woodson.
And I don't want to dwell on this tonight because it's late and there's a lot of things we could keep raising on this, but I also want everybody to be cognizant that at the same time, we're going through a massive real estate correction in the country right now. And 1-bedroom condos are the absolute biggest thing in almost every major city right now that are taking the biggest hit on families. And so families that have 1-bedroom condos are almost all losing money right now if they have to sell or they have to leave because they went up so dramatically. So owning is always obviously better than renting, and that's always something to be considered. But I think there's also a real estate assessment process that we should do as we move forward with this over the next year to look at what is the right mix, and throwing a large set of 1-bedroom conversions or townhouses or condos that are just built, regardless of where the source is, into it, that is also setting our citizens up for potential financial challenges. If there's a market correction like we're going through, which we go through every seems 10 to 12 years, then that is also something we want to be cognizant of and not just give that opportunity. We need to be able to make sure it's a valid opportunity because we're trying to create residents who are going to be here for extended periods. But I don't want to dwell on this tonight because there's obviously a lot of discussion, and we're having public hearings coming up in a few months to discuss this in more detail. Thanks.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions from Oh, wait a minute, Audrey, you have your hand up.
I'll be really fast. I
Okay.
was just gonna say that with respect to the condo conversions, I don't know that it would be limited to one bedroom, a single person or a couple dwelling unit. I was thinking small families. Like the homes, for example, in Preston Park are upstairs, downstairs, front yard, backyard. They're condos. They're a nice size. I think if you put it on the market for 300,000, 360,000, a lot of young families would be able to jump in and at least get their foot in the door with respect to building equity. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah. And as part of the, the overall housing element process, we're going to be looking at housing for all types of, the community. So whether that's accessory dwelling units, whether that's apartments, whether that's condos or single family homes or another type of dwelling unit, we're going to be looking at housing for that can meet the needs for, the full community.
Okay, I do want to open this up to the public. We have one member of the public here. So if Mr. Kennedy is interested in speaking to this issue, you are welcome to speak to it now.
Chair, can I make a
And
quick point of order?
yes,
I just noticed that we didn't offer public comment on the other informational items. Was that a mistake, and if it was a mistake, can we give Mr. Kennedy a couple extra minutes if he wants to make any comments on those, since they were informational, we didn't?
right. In fact, I believe council again has said that informational items, according to the Brown Act, are not something that is opened up to the public. So that's why I didn't open that up, but perhaps Guido, you could elaborate on that. I may not have understood that correctly. And then Mr. Kennedy can speak.
Yeah, I should have got my law degree. You guys would be paying me a lot more to be here. I mean, usually informational items, if somebody raises their hand, I think the issue was that members of the public pull items off consent, which I don't think is actually allowed, but people can comment on things on the agenda. So
Yeah, I just thought informational items was just that. It's for information. It wasn't about discussion. So that's why I didn't open it up. But Mr. Kennedy, you are welcome to speak on this issue, or if you want to go backwards, I guess that's okay too. And you are muted. So I see your face, but you're not saying anything. So I'm assuming the answer is no. Okay. I do not have, I've lost my agenda again. I'm not very well organized tonight.
Madam Chair, this is the last item, and then it's just staff updates. At this
Staff
point.
updates. Okay, so let's move on to that then.
So
I'm assuming that we don't have to vote on this in any way.
no,
I don't need a
tonight-
motion.
Tonight is just a study session.
Okay,
Ryan, Kamiko, and I will be coming back in around February, March-ish. You're probably going to have another 2 or 3 bites at the apple. As
Okay.
Ryan indicated, I've put the housing element survey. I would encourage all of the planning commissioners to fill out the survey. That helps us. Part of this housing element cycle is we have to prove to the state that we've done a broad amount of outreach. So the more people who fill out the survey, that helps me with our certification. The presentation from last night's workshop and this one will be put on the web. And then as we build the document, we'll be pushing stuff out to the commission. And so please stay involved, please asking questions, and we're glad to have the commission involved in this process. So
that's great. So I'm going to say thank you to Kamiko and Ryan for being here tonight. Kamiko, we never even got to hear you say hello, but I'm glad you were here in case you were needed. And Ryan, it was a great presentation and great questions. Your answers were very helpful. Okay,
To meet you all.
So we will move on. Any correspondence or information from staff at this time?
No, just that the December 8th meeting is really, really important. If you can't make it, please let me know. We are going to be taking up the affordable housing overlay policy. If the commission makes a positive recommendation and the council adopts it, and if the state blesses it finally, then we will be whole with the state for 4th and 5th cycle. So that December 8th meeting is really important for the commission. So hopefully you guys can all be there. So.
And commissioners, this would be the time, if you want to see something on an agenda, you need to let Guido know now so that it can be put on the agenda after the first of the year, because it looks like our December 8th is going to be very busy. So I'm not seeing any hands raised. I think that then we are adjourned.
Awesome.
Great. Thank